Hey, I got a message for you today. I know who you are. I know who watches this. I know because when wisdom shows up, there are two forces that arrive. One is the one that's going to be destroyed, and one is the one that was chosen to ascend. No, I didn't make that up. It's in the Gospels. I love how people laugh and they say, these religious zealots, they don't know anything. They're always preaching this end-time prophecy and all of this nonsense. And you know what? I'm just fine in my sinful, lying, deceitful, manipulative ways. I've made it this far. See, the biggest trick, the biggest con game, that the ones who are carrying out the orders from Hades, from the mind of evil that will destroy itself, including the hosts that are participating, because that is your certain end if you're participating. And if you look around, you'll notice that time's up. You won't get another warning. This is it. This is your last call. So you can pat yourself on the back if you're part of the plan that is going after those who are of the light, those who usually have done no harm to others, but because they are of the light, they are persecuted by everything that is unholy. And haven't you noticed that the most unholy things congregate in the highest places of power on this planet? For it is Satan's pulpit, because it already was written as such, you see. And that's why when you laugh at the Bible, you might want to look around. You might want to take a good look at some of these ideas of coming door to door and doing the great purifying cleanse. Oh, you didn't know that's what was happening? You didn't know that that's where we're at right now? Well, that's why I'm telling you. You might want to pay attention to where you stand in relation to the time that you're in. Because while your ego believes as long as you put food on the table, as long as you're doing fine and yours are protected, then you can just get away with a little bit of this and that and, shrug some of that conscience under the rug because, following orders is what it's all about because it preserves myself. It might not be the most right thing at the end of the day. And sure, maybe these are innocent people that only want to stand up for their freedom that was inherently given to them by God, which you are trying to take, by the way. I remind you, which you are trying to take, by the way. Freedom from their liberty, their enjoyment of life, to live free without being robbed, stolen from, coerced, manipulated through fraudulent means, always fraudulent from the beginning, ab initio, all the way to the beginning. Every contract the devil made was fraudulent. Every one of them is a moot point. And the ones who follow those performances, you might want to look around because it'll be your loved ones next. And then it will certainly be you. Because one thing I can guarantee you, as sure as the sun and as sure as the air that you breathe, is that evil destroys itself. If you were a part of my ministry, I would show you every place in the Bible where this already was written. Because you're living in the mind of God and you're a thought in the picture of the dramatization. It's just a matter of which character are you, the one that gets smoted and destroyed, or are you on the good side? Hey guys, Stop by to see the family. See, this is the reality of my life. This is where the wealth is. This is where all of the good times are rolling.
Hello.
Yeah?
If you want to come and say hi, come here.
And you know that there are certain people in this world that would want to harm this right here. And they will carry out orders to try and do so. Oh, yes, they will, at their own demise. And they will be thoroughly destroyed by the hand of God. And no certain doubt they will end up begging for mercy, because it was already written that that's the case. And you see this right here. This is love. This is the power of love. This is life. This is life. See, wherever there's love, there's life. Wherever there's theft and dishonesty, and wherever there is vicarious lies masquerading as truth, carrying out orders, following orders like the good little Nazis did. You see, doing these things always doesn't just put you on the wrong side of his story, because the only story is his story, God's story. It puts you in the pit of despair and hell that there is no end to the suffering. And so the begging for mercy that comes for those who are following the orders is always minuscule compared to the pain and suffering that comes from going through the purification when it was already warned that they should turn and repent at once, and they didn't. So this is your warning from a prophet, from a minister. And I'm saying, if you don't turn and repent at once and cease serving an evil master and cease pursuing those who are sinless and blameless in the sight of God, then you will be utterly and ultimately wishing that you would have listened to this a lot closer. Not because of flesh, we don't wrestle against that. We wrestle against things much stronger than you.
I think we're joining in a pretty deep part of the conversation.
This whole thing is deep. I only speak what God puts on my heart, and I know what's going to happen before it even happens. And I know who watches this. And I know all of the motives of those who watch this. And so I share.
Was very cryptic.
I share with them that I know that I know that they know that I know, and I also want to let them know that I already know how this plays out. So, with that said, I'm gonna go for a walk, and I'm gonna keep going up the lake.
Enjoy your walk. Bye bye.
Okay. Love you guys.
Love you.
You got it. Yep. See, I know what season we're in. I know what season we're in. I know how this plays out because Scripture has already told us, and I know what season it is. And I know who the characters are. And I know the outcome of each character. Because I have to just check their attitude towards life, towards how they treat their fellow man, which is the most simplest of all laws. It's the only law that actually God upholds with justice, with the divine hand, with the all strength and the almightiness of God. See, there is no other law. There is no other command. But yet we've made about 1 million of them. They call them statues. They're graven images. It's a fallen world. And it's a tireless fire. It is an evil taskmaster that seeks to punish all. No good deed shall go unpunished in that world. None whatsoever. For the ruler of Hades, which is the mind of mortal men, which is the ignorance of the Father, the lack for want of peace, and want of comfort, which they cannot find, nor will they ever find. Because there's only one peaceful comforter, and the world killed that when it showed up. The world killed the one who came to love in peace and comfort those who were suffering. Now, what do you think happens to those who partake of the error that tries to kill those who are in the light, who are chosen by wisdom to ascend? What do you think happens? I'll tell you exactly what happens. They are first given fair warning. They are told. They are instructed. They either receive the message or they move in disobedient defiance to the message, and they carry out the orders that were given unto them. Although they know in their heart it's not right. They know in their heart they're doing wrong. They absolutely know in their soul that they're going to be penalized for this. But yet they try to sweep it under the rug in their mind, in their thought. Because they believe they have time to clean it up later. That they will make amends when the time comes. Unfortunately, the time already came. The cleansing and the purification is going on. So when you see people that you know, and they start to drop like flies that hit windshields, lifeless, and there's no cause and there's no one to blame, because guess what? You're dealing with forces that are far beyond your human comprehension. You cannot kill an idea. You cannot protest against an idea. You cannot raise an army and try to subdue an idea that is already sent and already carried out, that was already in the mind of God before you even woke up in this dream of the physical five senses. This is nothing but a simulation. And you've chosen who you are in the simulation by your attitude towards life and how you approach life and who you serve. And those that carry out the orders, their fate is far worse than the fate of those on this trajectory who seem to be the ones that are powerless to do anything. See, the innocent ones are being held culpably responsible to blame for the guilt that is properly due to those who are carrying out the orders. But you see, in a true sense of how reality works, since it is always in perfect balance and harmony, you can check the work of Walter Russell. If you don't like the Bible, you can see it from that point of view. The whole universe is resting in a sense of perfect balance and harmony, and the dielectric forces always find their place of rest, and they can only do that when they're in perfect balance. So that means there's a perfect accounting system in place, and this perfect accounting system allows for no error to exist. And so wherever there's a human will and there's a propensity to act from a position of trying to sweep something under the rug, thinking that these motives to harm, to kill, to destroy, to ruin people's lives, to make others suffer, to try to gain the upper hand, to try to gain power over someone else. See, whenever you try to take away someone else's freedom, you break the highest law in the mind of God that you could possibly break. Because God gave man freedom as an inherent reflection of man's capacity to be in the image and likeness of God. And so when you come along and you try to insert yourself into that carrying orders, like the good little Germans that carried the orders, you're stepping on the toes of the Most High. And while you may flourish for a temporary season, I can guarantee you two promises. Promise number one is all of your gains in that flourishing will be void of peace and void of harmony. You will suffer every step of the way. You will find no peace in your house. You will know that there's no escape from divine law. while men will pat you on the back for doing good works in the natural, evil men, I mind you, that are carrying out evil orders, they will pat you on the back for doing the right thing according to the knowledge of the day. But your heart knows you're not doing the right thing. And you'll never sweep it under the rug no matter how hard you try. You'll never find a place of rest because there's only one place of rest. And that's in the repenting from that. That's in the immediate action of turning back now. Before you do something you can no longer be forgiven for. God will have mercy on you, but you won't. See, you don't know what blasphemy is, and you don't know what a spiritual crime is. Whenever you do something in the natural, you are sowing in the winter season, you will reap in the summer. You will transfer to the other hand. You will raise it as a god in the archon of spirit. So whenever you take a freedom, or you take a life, or you create an unjust situation and try to reason it out, you erect a stronghold to put the universe back in its place of perfect rest and balance. And that stronghold comes against your life to purify you. And you see, the further you try to hide without rectifying it, without being the new man, without doing that which is right in the sight of God, the further you try to move further away from that, to try to run from it, the harder and more punishable the offense becomes. Because you can't escape it. Because you can't flee. There's nowhere to go. You can try to move 1,000 miles away. But that stronghold in spirit that you have sown for must be accounted. It must be accounted. And it's got your name on it. So what do? You have to step out of the defiance to the true nature of the goodwill that is the permanent expression of God's activity towards your fellow mankind. Goodwill means that you don't trample on the feet of others. It means that you don't steal what doesn't belong to you under any color of law, under any modification of the truth, fashion formed into some adverb fictional scenario that you're carrying forth in your reasoning mind, pretending that you are of anything other than ignorance itself. For all that you gain, you will certainly lose. And the peace that you lost is permanently gone until you have put the thing to rest. And what is on trial is the motive. The motive behind your action. The motive is what God is scoping out in your heart. You can't escape. There is nowhere to go. It is directly between you and God on this trajectory. There is no one else. What you make happen for others, you can count that God will make happen for you. As sure as you can count the days of your life so far. You know that they were there, or at least you think they were, because you've dreamed in ignorance, believing that you have ever lived a life outside of God. So as certain as you can count that, you'll be able to count the ramifications of what you've done. See, it's not enough sometimes just to say leave people alone, because God is the real and everything else is counterfeit. You're messing with God, is what I'm telling you. You're messing with God. You're trying to steal from God. You're trying to impose your will upon God. You see, that's what you don't get. That's what you're not willing to see. That's what you're not willing to identify as, holy man, if I go ahead and do something wicked to God, you know what happens is God has this way of purifying you, because you find out you did it to yourself. It comes to you, and then you have to be purified. You have to suffer the wrath of it. And you can't escape it. The only way to escape it is you have to come to the Father in repentance with a pure heart, with a humble heart. And you have to admit that you of yourself neither could do anything nor would you want to do anything that happens to be outside the boundaries of love for your fellow man. And love is the setting free. Love is the release of grudge. It is the absence of conflict. It is the negation of disharmony in your subjective personal analysis of what you think you ought to do under the circumstance, when you feel, when you think, when you believe you are just following orders. Whose orders are you following? Whose law are you carrying out? Are you suddenly a God? You have the capacity to carry out the infringement upon another's rights because someone gave you that authority? You've just made yourself a God. I know how that story goes. Hello. That story goes like this. That false idol that you have just erected in your self-evaluation becomes the very thing, through the suffering, that brings you the wisdom, that brings the accountability and balances the books. Because you just want to balance the books. You just want to balance the books. Balance the books. And yet when you imbalance God's books, you certainly will be taught a lesson. You certainly will experience all that you put forth, and it will be immediately aimed directly back right at you. Unfortunately, there won't be anyone to run to, because everywhere you go, the stronghold in the spiritual that you have erected you can't hide from it, because the entire purpose of your life is to be purified in wisdom, so that you shall do only that which is pleasing in the sight of God, not men. This isn't about me. This isn't even about you. It's about the very purpose of why we're here in this dream of the five senses, in the simulation. And if you can't sleep at night because you know in your heart that you have every reason to be afraid, if you're not on the right side of his story, you have every reason to. If you don't know the Father through experience, and you're trying to trample on the Father and take the Father's freedom for any reason whatsoever, you can be certain that you will lose yours. And when you lose it, it's the hardest way that you'll ever come to know and love and trust the Father. It's the hardest way that you'll receive the love that you're looking for in all the wrong places. The approval of men is vanity. It's the seeking of false love and false pleasure in a carnal mind that was cursed from the beginning. It's called the fire in the Gnostic Gospels. The fire first consumes all of the dwellings in the world. See, it spreads through the minds of mortals. It becomes the very government that outpictures itself out of the collective mind of mortality. And then over time, it starts to consume itself. And then it becomes the type of governance that's like an autoimmune disease, and it wages war upon itself. And then, when it has destroyed all corporeality, and then it gets purified and reformed. And that's the process of creation itself. And within that creation, there are decisions that we make of who we choose to be aligned with and who we choose to show up as in every moment. Do I love my brother as my neighbor? Am I doing that which is pleasing in the sight of God? Or am I trying to conceal my motives under the narrative of following the orders, seeking the approval of men who you can be certain are also going to be chastised by love and purified by the fire very soon, if not already experiencing it now? And it hurts. I've been through some of those fires. You see, I've been through some things that are very painful, including being bedridden, including losing everything, including losing loved ones. All of these things are part of the human experience. But the loss of freedom, see, that's the one thing that you don't mess with. That's the one thing that you don't tamper with. Because when you do that, the freedom that you lose is not just a temporal thing. I'll explain to you what I mean. It means that your name is not inscribed in the book of life. It means that you are not known by the Father. It means that when you are gasping for your last breath and you are wondering where your freedom to experience peace and harmony is, you'll have to remember what you have sown is what you are going to reap. And so you won't be saved in that moment. And you'll cry out for nothing, because there will be no saving of the sinner until the reformation has taken place. You don't get a free pass. You don't get a, I am a good person. I just did some shitty things. I'm a good person trapped in a bad institution. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist. Unfortunately, you have a decision of whether you're going to remain or you're going to leave. And if you remain, then every decision that you make in defiance to the goodwill nature, in the pureness of heart and mind, that brings about peace and harmony, every furthering of that motive to carry on under the deception that it is following the law of the land, the legal orders, the directive of the authority. And yet the irony is that meanwhile you look around and you just know it's all just a con game, because you see it. You know that people are being murdered. Yeah, you do. Oh, yes, you do. You know the whole thing was conjured up. You know that it was all made up. You do. Absolutely you do. Because God's man's not deceived. He pretends he is. Because he pretends he's just following orders. We're just doing this thing just showed up, and we're just, we're just being sound, and we're trusting the science, and, no. You know people are losing their lives that are, engaging with the remedy, and they're trying to sweep it under the rug because it didn't happen. Oh, no. But you know. See, all that matters is that you know. And because you know, and you know whose side you're on, because you know that you're on the side of the let's go and destroy. Let's go steal, let's go rob, let's go kill, and let's all pretend that we're doing good, because we can take care of our own by doing that, because we're given another day. I'm sorry, but you're not given another day. You're already dead. What I'm telling you is that this dream will end, and you're dead. If you have not known the Father, and I'm not talking about when you go to church and you beg and plead, you don't know the Father. You think you do, but you don't. The only way you know that you know the Father is when you are walking upright in this moment. In this moment. No other gods. And you are to love your fellow man as yourself. Love your fellow man as yourself. But you can't do that, can you? You just can't do it. You just can't escape the science. It's the science part. It's the, it's the promotion thing. It's the, this inflation's coming. I better just do a good job so I can have another meal and I can keep these paychecks rolling in. Paychecks. I hope you got a paycheck to buy your way out of hell, because hell is a state of mind. Hell is a form of suffering, the consequences of one's own action when they know that they were wrong in their motive and they tried to reason. See, they engaged with mortality, with the carnal mind, reasoning. And reason, they say, is of the devil, because it really is, because it's built on the construct of living in the derivative of what is real. What is real is love, freedom, harmony, goodness. The fruits of the Spirit are real because they are the attributes of the living presence that you have known your entire existence, because it's been with you until you sin and then you push it off and the peace leaves. Then you know that you have departed from Spirit and you have left your covering. So let me share with you what's happening in the world, and let me go ahead and just show you who you are in the story, because you're personifying based on your reflection. If you're reflecting goodness, peace, love, joy, harmony, then you're of wisdom. And if you're reflecting want, lack, strife, envy, maliciousness, carrying out the orders of evil intended powers, which you know in your heart they are, you're not that dumb. You see, anyone with an IQ above room temperature can't be that dumb. It's virtually impossible. And so the most impossible thing in the world is all of the good little order followers that are just joyfully going out there as the fire consumes within itself, because we're in that stage of the game right now. And next, you know what comes next? What comes next is corporeality is destroyed. It means the realm of flesh. It means that, hey, guess what? If you don't get to live in the flesh anymore, because I'm telling you that's what's coming, do you have a permanent home? Are you of the light, or are you not known in the book of life? You see, that's the real decision that lies before you right now. And that's where you're choosing to be in this story. And so the story is about Noah and the ark. Noah is wisdom. It's the story of wisdom and how wisdom is playing out and where you are in relationship to wisdom. So Noah is wisdom and the ark is the covering. And so Noah built an ark, a wooden ark, okay? That protective covering. The protective covering is when you reflect back goodness, love, peace, joy, kindness, and you represent the man whom God knew, who inscribed a name in the book of life, because you are of the motive and of the will of God. And since God is free and God's man is free, anything that tries to step on God's man's freedom is ultimately not of the will of God, nor could he ever find a place of rest, because he is in direct defiance to the will of God. He's nothing more than a petty thief, a murderer, an adulterer. And you see, the flood is coming. Oh, you thought it was about like a water flood. Oh, because you couldn't understand what a parable is. You don't understand what a parable is. It's representing the terms of something else. See, the flood is already here. What do you think the media is doing? What do you think the AI simulation is doing but flooding you with a false narrative? And you know where it all leads? I'll tell you, because the Bible is always right. Is it leads to the end. And if you're not of love right now, and you don't walk away from your darkness, your end, unfortunately, doesn't have the continuation of anything. It's just the end for you. You will not be known in the book of life, because wisdom is already here. The ark is already built, and wisdom is bringing everyone who is of the light into the ark now. And if you're not in the ark, then you are in the destruction. Therefore, there is nothing but destruction ahead for you. You are either in the ark or you're destroyed. You have no other alternative option. And it was a great flood. So you won't be alone, but you won't know anything, because you'll be nothing. You will cease to exist. And that would be a far worse penalty than you think you deserve. But unfortunately, you choose it because you are warned, and you have been warned. Your heart has been troubled. Your heart does not sit well with what you're doing. And it has been warning you repeatedly that your ways are not right, that you are serving a bad master, and that your days are drastically numbered at this point. So before you go pursuing your next target, your next victim of vengeance, thinking you're on the right team, you might want to stop and check your motives, because your high intelligent reasoning capacity is nothing if it is not of wisdom. Much to do, or much ado about nothing. The only good that is the good which God bestows. All other ill-gotten gain, you can rest assured, will be destroyed, including the motive behind all of it. And if you identify as the expression of that motive, it means you are not the man God created. And when the day of judgment is come, which it is already upon us, because the flood is here, and I still wonder if you hadn't seen that yet. You see, I already know that you have. I already have been told by God that you have. And I already know who you are. And that you're going to wrestle with for a long time and chew it over, because you just can't see how anybody other than your way of doing things could possibly be right. Because you think you know everything. You think you got it all figured out. You think that you're on the right side of history, when you couldn't be further from the truth and closer to the very suffering that I wouldn't wish upon my enemies. And I don't have enemies. I send you love. All I can do is give you a warning. You know, it reminds me of this time. I think it was a hockey game one time. And, you know, we stepped into the game, and, you know, we were coming off a pretty good streak. And by the end of the first period, it was 14-0. We were absolutely destroyed. Absolute decimation of our morale. Absolute. It was a shit show. I almost hung the blades up forever after that game. I realized that who I thought I was and how good I thought I was nothing. It was an absolute nothing burger against a far more skilled, far more precisioned adversary. And so when you go and you trample on the goodness of all that is by trying to step on the freedom of its toes and infringe your will, your misguided, falsely led, legalistic mind, that, by the way, is the mind of Satan, and it does have minions, because it's nothing but a virus. that legalistic mind carrying out its will, when it goes up against the mind of God, it gets absolutely decimated. It gets destroyed. And if you identify with that persona and you go down in that ship, you don't get saved by the bell thinking that because you showed up on church and you've been baptized and you did all the things that Yahweh told you to do, Satan masquerading as the truth, the man of the flesh. There is no God in the flesh. It's all spirit. It's all now. It's all this moment. It's all the fruits of that spirit in your heart, whether you're choosing to reflect them or you're choosing to turn to the lusts of the flesh, the carnal mind, the legalistic one, the satanic Hades ruler. Yes, these are all biblical terms, but they all represent a parable of what's happening inside of you and giving you directive as to where your next chapter is going to lead you. You see, if you end up in the persecution in the lake of fire, it means that the flood already came. It means that you chose not to get into the ark. You chose to keep going in your erring, ignorant ways. And when the flood came, you chose to be of the destruction. Yeah, that's not going to feel too good. That's not going to be worth that extra paycheck and that bonus and, that extra, that security that you thought you had, security in this world seems to not be much of anything at all, because it's all going to be over soon. And you have no idea, just like you had no idea what 2020 was going to bring. You didn't have a clue that it was the flood coming. You didn't have a clue that Noah meant wisdom has already shown up on the earth in the flesh. You see, the first appearance of wisdom is Noah. It represents the metaphor, the story of wisdom appearing, trying to get your attention, saying, hey, follow me. Don't carry on in your ignorance anymore, because there's nothing but God, and you're in a school and you're about to fail the exam. You've got to get your shit together because wisdom is calling. Are you going to join? Are you going to follow wisdom? Are you going to get in the ark? No. Hey, because if you don't, the lake of fire, the flood, is certain for you. You can't make this stuff up. You think I wanted to do this with my life? You think I wanted to be a minister? You think I wanted to be a pastor? Well, I know now that it's the greatest thing you could ever aspire to become, to preach the word of good, to be of service to God. I know that there's no higher calling, and it's an honor to even be part of that. However, do you think when I was drunk in my flesh, pursuing lust and power in the world, thinking that I was going anywhere, that if I could just, get laid more, if I could just make more money, if I could just, have more power, I just want power. If I just had power, a powerful position in life, the power to infringe upon others, what more power could I possibly ask for? The power to carry out orders and to make others submit to my will. That kind of power. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Of course it does. That means you are utterly and ultimately corrupted, and you will be ultimately punished. You see, I already went through it. That's how I can tell you. See, I didn't become a minister until I went through it, and I decided to get on board. You see, I had to go through some things. I had to go through the Lyme disease. That was an interesting time, being bedridden for 2 years. Sure hope that doesn't, be your experience in the human trajectory. Or maybe you just might, die, and then you'll have to be suffering the consequences in the realm of thought, because you're not given a free pass. Just because you leave one idea, one belief, the belief in a body, doesn't mean that you leave the consequence of what you've done. So you still have to balance the books. So you're going to balance the books one way or the other. You're not getting out of it. That's what I'm telling you. Balance the books. Just do it. You do it in your heart. You do it in your heart. Did I tell you that I was prophesied over that I'm a modern day Paul? The reason why that should make sense to you is because, you see, I first was Saul. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I was first Saul. I was the characterization of the ultimate persona that sought after lust and power. I wanted to sleep with everything that moved. I wanted power over men. I wanted to be in prestigious places. I wanted to be able to tell others what to do and have them follow my order because I was something and someone in this world, right? That's a Paul. And there are many of them out there because the strengthening of the ego develops the Paul. Strengthening your ego, all of your earthly possessions, and all your ties to the vanities of this world makes you stronger in the wrong way. Strong in arrogance is no strength at all in the mind of God. It's actually weakness masquerading as strength. And when it's exposed, that's when you find out how weak you really are. See, when God searches you and finds you to be wanting and lacking for his qualities, because you're not of the light, because you're not in the goodness, you're not allowing God's man to experience love and freedom because you're stepping on it, because your will is too big for the room. And you see, when God searches you, God lays it on you, and you get to experience it until it is burned off of you. What did that take for me? Well, 2 years of being bedridden, being bankrupt, having the whole world feel like it was the darkest place I could ever exist in, because I found out nobody gives a crap about you when you're not on top. So if nobody gives a crap about you then, what makes you think they give a crap about you now? And why should they? If you gave a crap about you, you would get right with God. And then you would realize that it's not about them at all. It's about you and God, and you and God, and you and God. Because you can't exist without God, and you will be purified by God, and every false motive will be found, searched out. Everything that you've done will be balanced. The books will be balanced, and you will suffer through the fire of everything that you did. Every harm that you caused, you will experience, and you will be able to understand from the knowledge of the other side of the same coin. That's what karma is. It's the action, cellular memory, reaction. So as you carry out your orders, and as you pretend you're doing good in the world when you're actually knowing in your heart that you're not, and you try to allude to the idea that you don't know that you're on the wrong side of history, because you are definitely stepping on the toes of the idea of freedom. And you see, everything God created was an idea. So you're trying to tamper with God's creation. That puts you in the flood. That puts you in the destruction at noonday, the wasteth that lieth by noonday. And that puts you in the suffering that is inevitable. And that makes me sad for you. Because I remember suffering. I remember how painful that was for God to break that spirit of lust and power and false righteousness according to the world's knowledge. God burnt that off of me. And it was not something that I would recommend. So with that said, that's what I would leave you with.